Hello and welcome to Smash Hit Sports. I'm your host, Cody, and we are right in the thick of bowl season. We had last weekend, a great weekend for bowl games. We had a great weekend of college basketball as well, which we'll touch on at the end. It's crazy. A lot of coaches being hired and fired. The transfer portal has gone crazy. Nick, it feels very NBA offseason. Am I wrong in saying that?
With the transfer portal?
Yeah.
And just, I mean, I feel like it's getting a bit out of hand. I was kind of like teetering the line between I like the transfer portal because it's fun and who cares about, like making sure like logic is in play and all that. But then like Malachi Nelson announced he's transferring.
Crazy.
Because USC was like, well, let's go get this senior from Kansas State to start this year. And I completely get why Malachi Nelson's like, well, this should be my job. This is why I committed here in the first place, because you told me that I was going to be starting by my sophomore year as a 5-star. And they're like, well, no. And so for me, that's like over the top. I don't like that at all. So now I'm like, I'm not sure how I feel about it. But yeah, I would say it definitely feels like free agency to a full extent.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Before we get into that, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. It's the best way to help the show, and it is completely free. That being said, the bowl games, first weekend recap, right? We're recording this on Monday, right in the middle of the Old Dominion Western Kentucky game. We'll see how that game progresses as we get through the show. That being said, the group of five still like really gives a shit about these bowl games. Like the Ohio Georgia Southern game, like there were a lot of really good bowls Saturday that like the Jacksonville State, there were so many good football games. Like I was hyped for it.
Oh yeah. Jacksonville State, Louisiana was that could end up being the game of the bowl season. That was unbelievable because Jacksonville State they had like 5 turnovers and 3 of them were returned for a touchdown. And it went into double overtime, and it was just like back and forth. And of course, they wanted it because like they probably weren't going to be in a bowl game. So it was just that was really cool to watch. Of course, I was like quad boxing or like double boxing, whatever, with the Miami, Ohio App State game, which was the complete inverse.
Yeah,
it was just like it was rain. It was piss poor raining. I think there was a fumble on every drive, probably. It was just disgusting.
Dude, so we'll jump to that one. That game was insane. The final score, 13-9, App State with the win over Miami of Ohio. Here's the turnovers in that game. There were 10 total fumbles. 5 of them lost, so 5 of them actually resulted in a turnover. But there were 10 times that the ball hit the fucking ground. 1 interception.
I think it might have been more. I swear the broadcast, like, I think there were a couple, like, mini fumbles where it was, like, right before you went down, he dropped it. Like, I think it was, like, 13 or 14 fumbles.
Yeah. So there's those 10, 5 lost, 1 interception, and then the teams were also a combined 1 for 4 on 4th down. Yeah. So this was the most turnover-filled game, all in all, between the 5 lost fumbles, 1 interception, 3 turnovers on downs. Just absolute anarchy in terms of offense.
I had a thought during that game that if either of these teams were playing like Iowa, for instance, I think the game would go 0-0 forever. Like I genuinely don't know if there would have ever been a score. Just because, I mean, the weather was truly terrible. Like you saw wide receivers, with gloves on, dropping balls that are like floated to them. And like, we'll get to how Cody and I did, in the first 7 games. Cody did very well. I did not. And I really think that a couple of them, especially like Miami, Ohio, I can't really look at myself and say, damn, Nick, you're such an idiot for picking Miami, Ohio, because, that really was a nonsense football game that just didn't go my way. But then I will say Boise State, I had never been more confident, and they lost. So they lost by double digits. So I was wrong about that, truly.
Yeah, it's definitely different from being wrong than like just the ball didn't bounce your way. That's what happened with this game. Ball bounced everywhere. App State had the only touchdown in the game. App State won. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty self-explanatory there. The Ohio game, Ohio Georgia Southern, first bowl game of the year, the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Ohio's true freshman running back, because their first 2 or 3 guys entered the transfer portal. Ricky Hunt, 23 carries, 134 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a receiving touchdown. 5 total touchdowns for this kid. Ties a bowl record, which is like the most in any bowl game.
Wow.
What a weapon. And get this, the kid only played 2 games plus the bowl game. So technically this is a red shirt year for him. And he still has 4 years of eligibility. Crazy.
Now, hopefully he doesn't like transfer after this performance. But yeah, I mean, I last episode, this was the first game we covered, and I said this is the only game I changed, and I changed from Ohio to Georgia Southern. So I just had like a bad taste in my mouth throughout all of bowl Saturday, because I was like, God damn it, why did I change that? My thing is, like, Ohio was not great against the run during like action. Georgia Southern had 10 total rushing yards throughout the entire game, which is insane. They had like 18 carries for 10 yards or something like that. So just a pitiful display of rushing from Georgia Southern, that when Ohio knows that all they have to do is just defend the pass, Georgia Southern's quarterback wasn't really good enough to win that game. So
yeah, they ended up 21 carries for 33 yards, 1.6 yards per rush.
Yeah. They ended up with 33 yards?
Yeah. It's just that's just abysmal though. It's so bad. But yeah, Ohio, that was a hell of a game. Especially without O'Rourke, who, you know, is transferring. We'll talk about him in the transfer section briefly, but yeah. And then, so the Jacksonville State winning in overtime, they turned the ball over 4 times, 3 of them being returned for a touchdown, is absolutely insane. When you look at the box score of that game, like, Jacksonville State dominated in every facet of the game. Like, they had 32 first downs. Louisiana had 14. Like, they had 526 total yards. Louisiana had 247.
Yeah.
But the turnovers made this game go into overtime. It's insane.
Yeah. It's strictly because of the fact that these turnovers were resulting in touchdowns, like just pick sixes, fumble recoveries, you know, for touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, Jacksonville State, that would have been one of the unluckiest losses ever if they hadn't pulled through, but luckily they did, considering we both picked them as well.
Yep.
And I'm genuinely happy for Jacksonville State. Like, they celebrated on the field, they were partying.
Yep.
Like you said, the group of 5, you know, they care. These bowl games still matter, and I think even when we go into the 12-team playoff, you're going to see that it's still going to matter to these teams. You know, and I think that has to say that, like, I think part of the reason why it was starting to not matter is we had so many bowl games. It's going to diminish a little bit. And so every bowl is a little bit more important when there's only like 35 bowls rather than the 43 that we have this year.
Yep. I agree. Last bowl game, I believe it was the last bowl game to kick off on Saturday. Texas Tech and Cal. Baron Morton, who he started at times when Tyler Shaw was hurt this year, and then Tyler Shaw transferred. I believe he's transferring to Louisville, which is,
I think so,
kind of crazy. Yeah. Especially considering, like, I don't think this is the only quarterback that Louisville is going to try to get in the transfer portal.
Right.
But yeah, they won 34-14 over Cal. That was a pretty dominant, like, Joey McGuire. That was him putting his nuts on the table and being like, "Hey,
yeah,
I'm still a good coach."
It was a weird game too, because Cal, like, first play scored.
Yeah.
And then I think they might have been up 14-0 at one point. And so, you know, it was the late game, so I don't think I was necessarily like locked into it, but I was feeling pretty good about me having, you know, Cal money line and all that, and just did not work out in my favor at all. There were 2 other games that we didn't really cover. The Fresno State dominated New Mexico State.
Yep.
I don't know. Where'd you go on that? Is that the one you got wrong?
That was the one I got wrong.
That's the only one you got wrong?
State. That one was like it was never in doubt. Like I never had a chance. Fresno State got up early and I was done.
And yeah, they were like, this is Mountain West football, baby. But
Yep.
And then Florida A&M versus Howard, which, was not great football. Wasn't a super fun watch, but it was a close game.
Yeah.
So I tuned in a little bit there. Again, neither of us knew anything about those two teams. So it was cool we both ended up getting it right. But 97% of people picked Florida A&M in the ESPN.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is nuts. And they covered the spread by 0.5. So, like, all the people that took a risk to pick Howard were so close to being right, but end up just getting pummeled because 97% of the people just got, a boost over you.
Yep.
So that sucks. If you picked Howard, I'm sorry. But yeah, it was a pretty exciting start. And we have an exciting game going on right now, Old Dominion, Western Kentucky. Old Dominion's kind of choking as we speak. So yeah, definitely excited to keep going with bowl season. But what do you say we move on to like talking coaches?
We can't just, there's a whole section on the show sheet, Nick, between the bowl games and the coaching moves. It's the pick'em update.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
So, we have the pick'em going on. I think it's a little too late to join, but it is what it is. We have like over 100 people in this pick'em, which is very, amazing. Very cool. So if you have joined, thank you. We appreciate you. There are 3 people in the pick'em that are 7-0 undefeated. They are the Gio Ramo, Corona 890, and Max with 3 100 signs. So shout out to y'all.
Shout out to y'all. Props too.
Yeah, props to those 3 people. That being said, we're still early, right? Like we said, 43 bowl games. We're just 7 in. So I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I am currently sitting at 4th at 6-1. Nick, you are, what is that? Tied at 93rd?
Like I said, Cody, not a great start for me. 3-4. I was riding such a hot streak going into it.
Yeah.
I think there was just too big of a break, Like
you got out of rhythm.
I got out of rhythm. It's like when you get the first round bye in like the NFL or MLB, and you're just out of rhythm. You let people catch up, but a little bit disappointing. But these are like the games that were played aside from Boise State. None of them.
Yeah, not high. These aren't high confidence picks.
Anywhere. Yeah. I definitely was like, I would have put my nuts on the table for Boise State, so that really disappointed me. But I mean, there are tons more games that I actually have like a knowledge bank and logic towards my pick rather than tossing out like a YOLO for Georgia Southern over Ohio.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. That being said, we got a bunch of bowl games coming up this weekend. I'll let you pick first, but what is your favorite bowl game from, this week?
Like upcoming?
Yeah, upcoming.
My favorite bowl game, that like the one I'm definitely going to watch is JMU Air Force. Just because like we saw it with Jacksonville State and how much it meant to them. Yeah. Like I really think that JMU, party on campus if they win, like it's just going to be like scenes. And again, Air Force was a pretty good team throughout the season, but I do think this is a very winnable game for JMU. Spread's pretty close, so I'm definitely that's my pick. Very excited for that.
Yeah, there are 2 that I'm kind of torn between. The first one is probably, you know what? I'll make the first one my pick as the game that I'm most excited to watch. Georgia Tech UCF. I think this game is going to have fireworks. I think it is going to be points all over the place. The total is currently set at 67. I took the over back when it was 64.5.
Nice.
But yeah, there are going to be points all over the board here for the Gasparilla Bowl, and standalone game Friday night, 6:30 kickoff. Like, that should be great. The other one I'm super excited for, Utah Northwestern in the Las Vegas Bowl, should be a really good game. Actually, I'm pretty excited for that.
I don't know if I believe it's going to be a good game. I do really like Utah in that, but I hope so. Also, breaking news that I just saw, the Dylan Raiola flip to Nebraska has been confirmed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this real quick.
Yeah.
Dylan Raiola going to Nebraska. This is going to sound really dumb because I don't like. There are 133 FBS programs in college football. One guy going to one school does not impact the, the realm of the sport. However, this is good for college football.
Oh yeah.
This is good for college football. And you want to know why? Because we, for a long time, I'm going to say like 2010 era. Actually, I'm gonna call it after that weird ass 2007 season. That's where I'm going to put the mark in the sand. After that point, we got into a really weird period of college football where the same teams just continued to get the 5-star recruits. And then
there was no talent disparity.
There was no talent disparity. It's why we've seen Alabama win so many national championships. It's why we've seen Georgia win 2 in a row. It's why we've seen Clemson win a couple national championships, because they've continued to get these 5-star guys over and over and over again. And I don't blame them. But here's the problem with that. How many phenomenal quarterbacks, or like, there are national championship winning quarterbacks at Alabama that I couldn't tell you their name. Yeah. I just could not tell you their name. And the reason being is because as soon as you leave, guess what? You are replaced immediately. You know where you're not going to be replaced is a school like Nebraska. You are going to go there. If you take Nebraska to a fucking Rose Bowl, I'm not even, or, a 12-team college football playoff, whatever, you're a fucking legend. Yeah. You're a legend at that school. Mm-hmm. I would, and obviously, this is me sitting on my ass in a chair with a microphone. But if I had to pick, if I had the option of being able to be a stud somewhere, or, a great somewhere that continually has a lot of greats, let me do it somewhere unique. Let me do it somewhere cool. You know what I mean?
I mean,
like Raiola would just be the next quarterback up at Georgia, but now he might be the dude at Nebraska, which would be awesome.
Yeah. Georgia is, like, right now what we saw from Alabama for a long time, right? Like, Georgia is just, they have so much talent that with Carson Beck coming back and, a lot of quarterbacks on that roster, Raiola's sitting there like, I don't know, maybe I might be a redshirt sophomore by the time I get a chance to start, kind of like Carson Beck. Mm-hmm. In Nebraska, he's probably going to start off the bat, right? Because Jeff Sims was terrible, and he's gone, right? Like, did they get a transfer in?
I haven't seen one yet, but if
they were saying Kyle McCord was looking there, but then
if I'm him, if I'm Rule, I still try to get one guy. You know what I mean?
I honestly,
you don't want to start a true freshman. He'll get murdered.
Well, Trevor Lawrence was a true freshman. He didn't get murdered.
But did Trevor Lawrence start as a true freshman? No, it was Kelly Bryant.
Well, not at the very beginning. Fair.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I would rather have.
That was because Clemson had Kelly Bryant. Like, if Trevor Lawrence started, because he came in on that Texas A&M game and immediately lit up college football, and that was the second week of the season. He just didn't play much that first game against whoever, the Citadel or whoever it was.
Yeah.
Who cares? But, I mean, my point is that the talent disparity that you're speaking of, I've been preaching that was the biggest problem that college football had for a long time, is that there just weren't enough teams that could compete with the big dogs. It was like 5 or 6 teams, and then the rest were playing each other. But you weren't playing against these 5 or 6 teams. Now, and like that's kind of why in 2018, I'm like, we need to have a 12-team playoff, because the 12-team playoff, like, unconsciously and without even trying to, will improve talent disparity, just because of what you're saying. If Dylan Raiola, as a sophomore, takes Nebraska to the second round of the college football playoff, like, what is that going to do to Nebraska's brand of football? That is going to be fantastic for them. The recruiting, the booster money is going to be coming in because that fan base is great. Like, the recruiting trail is going to be better for them.
Yeah.
It's just better for the sport all in all. So I think that's the perfect move at the perfect time with the 12 team starting next year. Very excited. I wanted him to commit there off the bat before he committed to Georgia. He didn't. I was disappointed. So that's awesome. I'm very happy.
Yep. I'm very, very hyped for that as well. Before we get into the coaching moves, I just want to give a shout out into the AM, the most comfortable. They have graphic tees, regular tees, this polo that I'm rocking. I'll put the link in the description if you want to get one. But these tees are top tier, absolutely outstanding. But let's move on to the coaching ranks. Okay. I'm gonna name off a list of guys who have been hired, right? We'll talk about them, and then we'll rank our top 5 coaching hires from this cycle. Mike Elko to Texas A&M and Jonathan Smith to Michigan State. We've already talked about. Go back into the archives if you want to listen to that. Jeff Lebby to Mississippi State is a good hire. He was Oklahoma's offensive coordinator. Fran Brown, who was, I believe, Georgia's secondary coach, was hired as the head man at Syracuse. Kurt Signetti, who is or was James Madison's head coach, is going to Indiana. Manny Diaz, Penn State's defensive coordinator, headed to Duke. Willie Fritz to Houston. Willie Fritz was Tulane's head coach. John Summerall replaces Willie Fritz at Tulane. And then Jared Parker replaces John Summerall at Troy. Jared Parker is Notre Dame's offensive coordinator. So I guess let's kind of talk about the hire that I'm kind of the most interested in to see is Fran Brown at Syracuse.
100%. 100%. I was going to say the same thing.
Because he gave a really impassioned press conference when he got hired on. He wants to be at Syracuse. I'm not sure if he's like an alum or kind of how that fell in, or if he's from the New York area. But he gave a really impassioned speech about why he wanted to be at Syracuse, and he's like, hey, I'll be here as long as you'll have me. And then you partner that up with the fact that Kyle McCord is now transferring to Syracuse. Syracuse could be interesting in the ACC next year. Real interesting.
Think about this, Cody. Because Fran Brown was the Georgia secondary coach, KJ Bolden, who was Georgia's 5-star safety recruit from this last cycle, just took a visit to Syracuse and is rumored to maybe be flipping to Syracuse. That would be insane.
That would be insane because he is an unbelievable. He's one of those 5-star plus, 99.98 rating. Yeah.
Yeah. You never expect him to go to Syracuse. But this is the ACC is getting a bunch of these transfers, a bunch of new coaches in the ACC. It's going to be really interesting. If KJ Bolden does make that flip, we have Grayson McCall at NC State now, Tyler Shove at Louisville.
Yep.
McCord at Syracuse, Max Johnson at UNC.
Yep.
There's probably more I'm blanking on too, but Miami might be getting a quarterback. Cam Ward's still on the table. It's good for the ACC. They kind of need it because, obviously everyone wants them to disband right now. So it's kind of now or never for them to show their powers. I think Fran Brown, I'm expecting Syracuse to be pretty good.
Yep.
I like that hire a lot.
Yep. I also like the Manny Diaz hire at Duke. I think it's a pretty good hire. He was, a great defensive coordinator at Penn State. So we'll see how that ends up.
That's the old Miami head coach, right?
Yep.
Diaz?
Yep.
Yeah, he wasn't great there, but I guess that's a different scenario. I don't know. That'll be interesting.
I think he almost has better tools to succeed at Duke than Miami.
And
probably. That might be. I don't know. I just don't feel great about the state of Miami football program right now. The Signetti to Indiana hire I found pretty interesting. They fired Tom Allen, who had a $15.5 million buyout, which was pretty.
Yeah,
that's nuts. Yeah, it's a lot of money. But I think he'll be pretty successful. But what is successful at Indiana? If Indiana was to make a bowl game every 3 years, that's a lifetime contract, right?
Yeah, it is interesting because Jordan McLeod, the JMU quarterback, I think is transferring to Indiana.
He's in the portal. I don't know where he'll end up.
I would be so surprised if it's not Indiana. And a bunch of other JMU guys are probably going to be following Signetti because Signetti is the type of guy that is very family culture with his players and whatnot. He's a great coach. He has completely put JMU on the map. It's just it feels strange because Indiana is just such a pitiful team that needs direction so bad, but also needs talent. So it's like,
Yep.
is this going to be a really long-term process? How long does Signetti last? Are we going to see an immediate turnaround somehow? I don't know. We're going to have to look at the offseason for Indiana for sure.
Yeah, and Indiana's schedule, like the Big Ten schedule, is just it's going to be crazy next year. Like they're going to be
even harder. Well, it wasn't hard this past year per se, but it should be hard next year. Yes.
Yep. And then the other like conglomerate of hires, Willie Fritz to Houston, leaving the Tulane job open, and then John Summerall to Tulane. I think both of those are like close to home run hires.
Yeah, they're A plus in my opinion.
Yeah, Willie Fritz to Houston, I think, is an outstanding hire. He's just such a good coach. He's been at Tulane, like to beat USC last year in their bowl game, and then to all like they were within a touchdown of Ole Miss this year, and Ole Miss was a top 10, top 15 team. Like that's. So that's an outstanding hire. But I also like Summerall to Tulane. John Summerall was so good at Troy.
Yeah,
so that
like
was
25-4 record at Troy.
Yeah.
Like Troy was balling out. I love that hire for Tulane. Tulane should continue to be good, you know, in the future here. And then filling that Troy coaching vacancy is Jared Parker, who you know more about than I do. But that kind of feels like less of a home run hire to me.
Yeah,
than the other.
It's interesting because Parker was the like tight ends offensive line coach, one of those two at Notre Dame before he was promoted internally to the offensive coordinator spot. I didn't realize this. Notre Dame was top 10 in points per game this year. Kind of crazy considering how frustrated I was at times with that offense. But I think the difference of being an offensive coordinator and commanding a roster are two totally different things, right? Like as a head coach, as a totally different job. So I truly, I have no idea how successful he'll be.
I mean, he must have his interview must have been really good. Like he must have had good new things to say. Because I mean, I do think that Troy has kind of a high standard as far as who they hire, especially if they're hiring externally. So like I'm gonna trust it, but like I know nothing about it. Obviously, you know Jared Parker better than I do. But
all right, here are my top 5 coaching hires so far from this cycle. Number 1, I think it's Jonathan Smith. He's an outstanding head coach. Oregon State would have been a phenomenal place for him to stay. Unfortunately, with them not having a home next year, I'm giving it to John. Like he had to go. Number 2, I think is Willie Fritz. I really like this hire for Houston. I think it's going to set them up for success long-term in the Big 12. Number 3, I'm going Mike Elko to Texas A&M. Love the Elko hire. He was a great defensive coordinator there. Makes sense for him to come back. At number 4, I'm going to go with John Summerall to Tulane. I think that's an outstanding hire. A guy who's had a lot of success in the group of 5. And then my 5th spot, I'm going to go with Fran Brown to Syracuse. I think that's a really good hire for a team in the ACC that could separate themselves from the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I would put Mike Elko at my number 1.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, Duke, like, I don't know if Duke's ever gotten a 4-star recruit ever in the history of Duke football. Like, literally, Mike Elko's dealing with the hardest, you know, GPA requirement type of system to try to recruit to. And he gets Riley Leonard, who is a 3-star guy, and develops him into an NFL draft prospect who's going to be your starting quarterback next year. He also has a defense that was dominant, at least at the beginning of the year in ACC play. Like, I feel like people are looking at Duke's record under Elko, and they're like, oh, they're like a 7-win team. But that feels like a win for Duke football. And if you give him Texas A&M's pipeline of recruiting with he's just a football guy through and through, great defensive mind. I think that is going to be a mega home run hire.
Love it.
So that's 1. And then kind of like a steep drop where these are like really good hires, but like I don't know if I feel uber confident in their successes, but I will say that Jonathan Smith would be my number 2. Michigan State is a storied program, and to have a head coach that you can kind of put your trust in, which they haven't really had in a while. They kept D'Antonio for far too long, and then have Mr. Mel Tucker phone sex, all that drama. Jonathan Smith, straight up normal guy, knows what he's doing, an analytical brain, should be good for Michigan State. I would then go Fran Brown at number 3. I really like that hire. I feel like Georgia has, like I said earlier, become the Alabama in the sense that every coordinator coming out of Georgia that's getting jobs, whether it be the NFL and Todd Monken on the Ravens,
yep,
or, defensive coordinators going here, offensive coordinators going there. I just think that if you're getting that culture to be your head coach, it's going to do really great things for you. So I love that Fran Brown hire. I would then put Cignetti at number 4, just because that feels like a massive win for Indiana. That's the best coach they could have gotten. So just in the sense that like good for Indiana, I guess. I feel better for Indiana than I do for, like, say, Tulane or something. I would then put Willie Fritz going to Houston. Houston had a pretty tough year this year. They're expected to compete in the Big 12, consistently moving forward. If they want to do that, they needed to make a home run hire here. And I think Willie Fritz has done enough to prove that he will be that, especially with the Texas pipeline. So, yeah, that'll be my 5th.
Love it.
But
Absolutely
I do like all the
love it. Yeah, I mean, they do a hell of a job. There isn't like a big like question mark hire. You know what I mean? There's not one that like is super puzzling. Moving on, portal updates. So we talked about it briefly. Malachi Nelson entered the transfer portal. That was the 5-star guy for USC who was presumably supposed to take over after Caleb Williams. And the reason he transferred is because Will Howard from Kansas State is now headed to USC. You also brought this up, Riley Leonard to Notre Dame, Kyle McCord to Syracuse, Dylan Gabriel to Oregon, which I think we touched on briefly when we were talking about the Oklahoma Bowl game in the last show. Juice Wells to Ole Miss, who Juice Wells was awesome at South Carolina this year as a wide receiver. They got 2 defensive ends to transfer in. They got one from Tennessee, I believe. I'm not sure where the other one's from. And then Max Johnson to North Carolina. Florida. Okay, that checks out. And then Max Johnson to North Carolina. Man, these are some crazy. It's college football free agency. It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, literally as we speak right now, Western Kentucky, 40 seconds left, down 7, 3rd and goal. So this is kind of crazy. Like we're watching this live, recording college football.
It's beautiful.
Doing my best.
It's bowl
here.
season, baby. It's
bowl
season.
season. We're multitasking right now. But yeah, I touched on Malachi Nelson and how I hate that. And like the way I put it is, what if Trevor Lawrence leaves to go to the draft and 5-star DJU is looking like he's going to take over, but instead Clemson is like, well, we're just going to go get, some Joe Schmo from Cincinnati or something, or just get some random guy who's probably not even an NFL draft prospect. Of course, DJU would transfer out, but what's the point of even recruiting him in the first place? So I don't get it at all. I hate it. I like Riley Leonard to Notre Dame. I hope that he can improve a little bit as a passer. I don't know what your wide receiver core is going to look like. I know you have some transfers.
It's 100% new. We had guys out. We have guys in. We have Bo Collins from Clemson.
Bo.
Transferred in. A guy from FIU who I think Mitchell might have been his last name, who had a really good year at FIU. But it's going to be literally a completely new wide receiver.
Hard to tell right now, because that's what I was thinking. I was like, if Riley Leonard is, not a great thrower of the football and doesn't have these great receivers, not sure if that's going to be a hit per se, but I hope it is. McCord to Syracuse under Fran Brown. We already talked about it. Dylan Gabriel to Oregon. It's great. He's going to be 24, 25 years old.
But that's a home run. He's going to be so
100%
good there.
home run. 100% home run. I do feel bad, though, because Oregon had this, four-star, like, good quarterback just waiting for his turn. And, of course, now he's in the transfer portal because Oregon wasn't going to let him get the chance. He's like 22 now, so it's not like he's Malachi Nelson too young.
Yeah.
He probably deserves a chance, but we'll see where he ends up going. I forget his name. Ole Miss is honestly the story of the transfer portal season. They've
gotten
getting
some
the top two
dudes.
defensive ends. They have returning wide receivers that are
Trey Harris is great.
Trey Harris is unbelievable.
Yeah.
They have and then you get Anton Wells. And then the number one defensive tackle in the portal is crystal ball to Ole Miss right now, which is nuts. Tavon Walker, maybe? I don't know. It's looking like Ole Miss with a return of Jackson Dart and a bunch of talent. Quinshon Judkins, for all I know, might be returning. I have no idea. That reminds me, Rocket Sanders, the Arkansas running back.
This is on the transfer out. KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders, who were the only two decent parts of that Arkansas offense last year, are both transferring out.
Rocket Sanders just committed somewhere, though.
He's pretty much confirmed to South Carolina. I don't know if it's official, but it's all but official. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel like I saw something earlier today where I was like, "Whoa, good for South Carolina."
Yeah.
No idea what. Oh, Western Kentucky just scored on 4th and goal. Oh my God.
Holy shit!
Crazy. Old Dominion just choked so hard.
Overtime.
Cody,
unless they go for 2.
This is shams. Maybe they go for 2. This would be crazy. All right. Max Johnson to UNC is the last that we're touching on here. That was actually like the first commitment of the transfer season, I feel like. So, I don't really know what to expect from UNC next year. They should probably get a couple more guys in the transfer portal, but they're losing Cedric Gray. They're probably their best player on defense.
They're losing Tez Walker. He'll go to the draft.
Yeah, Tez Walker's leaving. I'm going to have to do a little more research in the offseason about UNC and Max Johnson, but from what I've heard, they're pretty excited about it.
Yep. Yeah, should be interesting to watch. There are some big names that are still in the portal, especially from the quarterback standpoint. Dante Moore is probably the biggest, the 5-star from UCLA. Cam Ward, who had a pretty good year, especially to start at Washington State, but kind of slowed down a little bit. KJ Jefferson we talked about. And then DJU from Oregon State and Malik Murphy from Texas are both still in the portal. So
what's crazy about Dante Moore is that as of like 2 hours ago, the report is that Oregon is the team to beat as far as getting him, which is really, really weird.
He would go to sit? That is weird.
He would go to sit behind Gabriel and then play. I don't know. I honestly, if this is like Dan Lanning putting witchcraft on people's minds and stuff, good for Dan Lanning and good for Oregon. But that's the report right now. I would hate to see that because it feels like he's a guy that could start next year for sure.
Yep.
Cam Ward is looking
like Miami, but
it could be Ohio State. But if not Ohio State, it's going to be one of those Florida schools, Miami, Florida State. Could be Florida. I don't know.
I don't know who's going to Ohio State.
I don't know either.
I hope they didn't prematurely kick out because they told Kyle McCord to get the fuck out of there. It is not like Kyle
Maybe
McCord's
they
not
believe
like
in Devin Brown. Maybe they think he's the answer.
I guess we'll find out in the bowl game. I guess, but damn.
Yeah, we will find out.
Yep. All right.
And that would be drama, of course.
Oh,
if
yeah.
Ohio State lands a transfer and Devin Brown's like, well, now I'm leaving, because then that would just be an extension of this pattern.
Crazy
that we're witnessing.
cycle of
like these elite teams that are like, let's go get a transfer, and the guy we recruited that was literally sitting and waiting now is just leaving your team. So annoying. This is where moments like this where I'm actually kind of proud to be a Clemson fan and understand a little bit of Dabo's reluctancy to enter the portal, because it is getting a little out of hand.
Well, the thing is, with these transfer quarterbacks, I'm not a fan of the 1-year rentals. I can understand if you're going to get a guy and get him for a year or two in your system. LSU with Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow, Like getting a Caleb Williams at USC, like you got him for 2 years, but getting a guy for a 1-year rental, like if he's not elite right off the bat, like it's kind of, you just kind of set yourself back a little bit.
And
like,
you're pushing everyone else out by doing it, you know?
And like, I understand. I was talking actually with my mom about this, but my mom was like, why does Notre Dame keep getting 1-year rental guys? And I was like, well, we didn't have a quarterback who was really outstanding once Brian Kelly left. Brian Kelly didn't recruit at all on his way out. And then the quarterbacks that we had when we did transferred out, right? So it's like, well, we kind of needed a 1-year spot guy here and there. But we'll have a true freshman next year, should be pretty good. So what I'm hoping is Riley Leonard, 1 year at Notre Dame, CJ Carr gets a chance to learn.
For me, that's perfect. You know, that's how it should be used, in the sense of, if you don't have a quarterback, then that's great that the portal exists because you can go get one. But if you have a quarterback, getting one and then sending the quarterback you have away is like a slight increase for less years of football. You're basically saying, like, for the rest of time, you're probably just going to use the transfer portal for quarterbacks. Like, why is anyone going to commit? Like, why would a quarterback, after Malachi Nelson transfers out, why would someone commit there?
And the thing is USC is not a Will Howard away from a national title. They had Caleb fucking Williams. You know what I mean? Like, that's if you're going to say, well, Ohio State is a Cam Ward away from a national title, then maybe I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? But like, to sit here and be like, oh yeah, that's their bit. Like, Notre Dame's biggest problem was not Sam Hartman. I can promise you that. Like, it was their wide receivers and lack of explosive weapons on the outside. Like, we couldn't put up points and get first downs when we needed to. And Ohio, like USC, their problem is on the defensive side of the ball. Like, I'd be trying to do what Ole Miss is doing and get every good defensive transfer that's coming out of these SEC schools.
Well, clearly, I mean, Will Howard is not Caleb Williams. He's worse.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. That was such USC, a weird transfer.
Yeah. If anything, USC has just gotten worse because they lost their future quarterback and their best quarterback, and nothing has happened on the defensive side of the ball. It sucks because in our, bowl pick'em, I picked USC because I was really excited to see Malachi Nelson play. Of course, now he's not going to be playing. Maybe I don't know what he's doing. I don't know who's going to play if it's not Malachi Nelson. But
I don't know.
Would love
I have no idea
to move that to Louisville. But obviously the graphic's out already.
It's tough.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll have to see, but it's choices like that from these schools that just feel like obtuse and not thoughtful enough. It's very present-minded and very ignorant to the big picture. So maybe we'll see a little domino effect down the road, but and we're probably going to see more this year. That's going to maybe upset us a little bit.
Oh yeah. It's just the first window. We'll see come the spring, a whole lot of other guys move. One more thing before we switch over to college basketball. Actually, two more things. First, did you see the press conference with Chip Kelly? Him talking about that was
vaguely, but
if you guys
very interesting.
If you guys have not watched that, just look up Chip Kelly press conference. You'll be able to see it. He gives a really insightful thought on the future of college football and kind of how football needs to kind of separate itself from the rest, the NCAA. And like, if you're going to have these football conferences that travel all over the place, fine. But like, what you're doing to the softball team and basketball team, stuff like that isn't really fair to them. I thought it was really insightful, but go watch that clip if you guys haven't. And then the second, I want to give a shout out. I watched college volleyball yesterday. I watched the national championship between Texas and Nebraska. It was Georgia to TCU. Texas obliterated Nebraska. Nebraska had a phenomenal season. I mean, just absolutely outstanding.
Men's or women's?
Women's. Yeah. Texas has an outside hitter who it is Jermaine O'Neal's daughter.
What?
She's a bad motherfucker. Like when the volleyball comes off her hands at like, I'm not kidding you, like 90 miles an hour. It's insane. It's legitimately
I'm
insane.
telling you, Cody, we need to buy stock in volleyball because, like,
dude,
it's the next big thing.
I've been saying women's volleyball is badass. It's badass.
It's like if it comes up on like my Instagram feed, TikTok feed, or something, I watch whatever video it is because every highlight play that
it's crazy
is insane. It's like the ball is getting hit at 1,000,000 miles per hour. People are like diving for their lives and somehow hitting it perfectly up, and then just repeat that all over and over again. It's pretty simple to understand from a scoring standpoint.
Yeah.
Everyone's played beach volleyball before. Like, it's a fun sport that people can get into recreationally. I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't been, on this upward trajectory throughout all of time. But right now, you just saw like Joe Burrow created a volleyball league because he's kind of using his brain. He's being smart.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think, not in the near future per se, but volleyball might be like ESPN Thursday at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Like, a bunch of people are tuned in to watch a volleyball game, whereas throughout my whole life, I've never really done that,
Yeah. It was an outstanding match. That being said, the vibes are high in Texas. You know what I'm saying? Their women's basketball team is good. Their women's volleyball team just won a title.
I have a
Texas basketball. Now Texas football's the vibes are high in Austin. The vibes are high in Austin.
I am a Texas fan officially for this playoff because I will say Texas basketball looks pretty bad. They're somehow ranked, and they should have lost to Louisville. They beat them by 1 on like a buzzer beater.
Yeah.
Which, speaking
they'll
of
make
basketball,
the tournament probably. But college hoops, baby.
College
hoops.
Talk basketball. Yeah, what a slate, Cody. On this past Saturday, we had one of the best slates of the year, as far as big games.
And between that and then having NFL games and the bowl games.
Yeah, 3 NFL games. Cody, I mean, I had the quad box on my TV and the quad box on my computer and a game on my phone because I needed to watch college basketball, college football, and NFL. And literally, like, I was getting texts, but I was just like frantically. I think I had the volume on for all of them too. Yep. So I was just, I was probably close to having a seizure, but it was amazing. But I will say, after this Saturday, we're kind of in a little tiny bit of a dead zone as far as like the next 10 days go.
It's
like,
the weird, like,
Christmas
into the start of conference play before that. Yeah. Around the holidays.
Yeah. Like, we're not going to see these like big games. Like Virginia, Memphis is this week. That should be a fun game. But for the most part, it's not going to be electric. So we're not going to like do game picks per se. And then obviously college football has some lesser important bowl games, still fun to watch. Definitely going to be watching them. But right when we get to like December 29th, 30th and on, it's full force. The bowl games are great. College basketball's in conference play. It's going to be awesome. But for right now, it feels like a good time to sort of recap what we've seen so far, especially this past weekend. As far as what we've seen so far, the thing that I've noticed that's crazy to me and a bit different is the amount of teams that I've watched that I'm truly impressed with, that I like genuinely think could make deep runs in the tournament, have lost to terrible teams.
Yep.
Like Northwestern, who beat Purdue at home. The next week, they play at home against Chico State, who isn't even in a conference.
One of the worst programs, like historically, in the history of the sport.
Yeah, like they people are saying like the fact that they're D1 is a disgrace to college basketball. Why? Like, they're not even in a conference. This doesn't make any sense. It's like the IUPUI team that had 4 players on their roster 2 years ago.
Yep.
And had to hold open tryouts. That's Chico State, and they just beat Northwestern on the road. How is that possible? Because Northwestern is good enough to be the number 1 team in the country.
They beat Purdue.
They beat like you can't even shit on Northwestern that much because they beat the best team.
Yeah.
Kentucky at home, which out of all college basketball venues, I think there are like 3 or 4 that are clear above and beyond home court advantage. Kansas being number 1. Kansas might have the best
Fog Allen
home court advantage in all of sports. I genuinely believe that. But Kentucky's right up there, and they lost at home to UNC Wilmington, who might be a tournament team. I would say it's like a 30% chance they're a tournament team because I couldn't tell you the conference they're in. The CAA maybe with Charleston. You then had St. Joe's, who went to overtime with Kentucky in Kentucky and then beat Princeton and Villanova, but then they lost to Texas A&M Commerce, who is Ken Pom, like 340. Auburn lost to App State, which is nuts. App State might be good, but that's still a bad loss. FAU lost to Bryant at home. That's insane. Bryant's in the worst conference in college basketball. Creighton, just like on this past Thursday, got smoked by UNLV. Who's they're 4-5 on the season so far. Villanova has lost to Penn and Drexel. Mississippi State lost to Southern. It's just a compilation of things that have you scratching your head, because in the past it used to be you get one of those per non-conference. Like, I don't know if you remember that year. It was right after the Zion year, I think, and Duke was playing Stephen F. Austin in the second game of the season. And Stephen F. Austin had that crazy like layup with 0.1 seconds left on the fast break to win. That was the only game all season where you were like, this is a tourney team that just lost to a bad team. And Stephen F. Austin was probably pretty good that year too. So yeah, it's weird. I can't even explain it, because the transfer portal in college football, you could argue, you know, when like the top 5-star Georgia players go to these weird teams, whatever, no one's going from Kentucky to Bryant. That's not happening. Like, Bryant should not be good. So that's just what I've noticed. And it's probably a telltale sign that the gambling on college basketball as a whole is going to be dreadful this season. Yeah,
it's absolutely insane. We also have 4-5 Michigan State beating Baylor by like 20 at Michigan State. Just, that was a wild ass game. Baylor got down, I think it was like 24-6 at one point, and they just never had a pulse. Baylor was undefeated going into that game, like number 6 team in the country, and they just got their ass beat.
They hadn't played that, you know, great of competition. They had a neutral win against Auburn, but that's kind of like all they had. So people were saying like, oh, well, this will be a good test for Baylor, because, and I'm not going to lie, I had a boatload of money on Michigan State. It felt like the most
I had a lot of money on
Baylor. Yeah, no, this felt so free to me, because Michigan State is a good team, and all 5 of their losses are quad 1 losses. Like this, they have the same team besides Joey Hauser that made the Sweet 16 last year. Tyson Walker can take over a game. If H.A.
And he took the hell over that game.
He did, because he's a god. If H.A. Hoggard isn't being an idiot, then they can be good. They have a bunch of 4- and 5-star freshmen and sophomores, like, and Tom Izzo as your coach, and you're playing at home in a must-win game to boost your resume because you're already a 5-loss team. That's free. So I wasn't surprised by Michigan State winning, but I was surprised that they literally made Baylor look.
They blew them out of the gym.
They made Baylor look awful in every aspect. Like Jacoby Walter, Baylor's best draft prospect, his draft stock plummeted because he looked terrible. So yeah, that was crazy. We also had Indiana, that's another home court advantage place where if you're playing
Assembly Hall,
it's Indiana could be so bad playing the best team in college basketball, and they might be like favored in that game. That's kind of what it was with Kansas. They were like +4. I looked at that line. I wanted to pick Kansas so bad, but I was like, I cannot do that because I know Indiana's not good this year. But they're playing at home, and they almost won that game. They were winning for a lot of it.
Yep. They squeaked out the win. I think it was like 74-70. Kansas did.
Kansas did. Yeah,
that was a hell of a game. Purdue played not a true home game, but like one of these awkward like pseudo home games. They played Arizona in Indianapolis, and they beat Arizona. That was an outstanding game. Purdue, the AP poll came out right before we started recording. Purdue is now back to the number 1 spot in the AP poll, which means they're probably going to lose a game that they shouldn't, because that's what Purdue does when they have the number 1 seed. But they've been so weird. I came out of that game. Both of these teams could make a Final Four. Like I have that game was outstanding too.
The height that both of those teams have over every other team
is crazy,
mixed with the like incredible guard play.
Yeah.
Like I would say that neither of those teams are really good on the wing, but like the
Yeah.
guard play, like Kylan Boswell for Arizona and Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer for Purdue.
Yep.
Those guys are the difference makers because they have so much height that if the guards are playing well, they're going to win. And I will say, I do think that both teams struggled a little more than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there were some sloppy moments here and there, but it is December basketball. And just from what we've seen so far this season, I mean, Purdue's resume is unbelievable right now.
Yeah, it's
like
it's outstanding.
They beat Gonzaga, Tennessee, and Marquette to win the Maui, and then now have an Arizona win. And then I'm probably blanking, but they probably have like one or two more good wins on their resume. So, yeah, they definitely deserve that number one spot in the AP poll for the time being, in my opinion.
Yep, I agree. Another game that was crazy. Purdue, they have the win at Alabama or against Alabama in
the neutral Alabama win,
Toronto. Yeah, so that was another great win for them. Clemson, Memphis, that was a great game. Came down to the wire. Unfortunately, your Tigers didn't pull it out. 2-point loss.
Yeah, which is okay. I went into
it's on the road, right? So like
it was a true road game against a Memphis team that's now ranked and is very good.
Yep.
And it's a 2-point loss in a game that like Clemson easily could have won.
Yeah.
There was some mistakes, sloppy play. The only takeaway I have is that like Joe Girard, like he's just not necessarily athletic enough. Like I don't think we have these freak athletes like a team like Memphis has, just like with speed and vertical ability. So that was kind of concerning. Like maybe if we played like an FAU, I'm trying to think of teams that just have a bunch of athletes across the board. It was really hard for Joe Girard to like create space, so he didn't have a great game. PJ Hall, hard for him to create space, but I'm not worried at all. Like I expected to lose going into that game. I'm fine that we lost that. Like we weren't going to go undefeated. That's a good team. It's a resume boosting loss if there is such a thing.
So good competitive game.
And then quick sidebar. Western Kentucky just won.
Fuck.
Yeah, they just won. Old Dominion blew a 21-point fourth quarter lead.
I saw that they were going for it on 4th and 6 in the overtime, and then Western Kentucky got the ball. So, damn it.
Yep,
it's brutal.
So I'm 3-5 now. Hip hip hooray! That the good news for my bets is that in Virginia you can't bet on Virginia teams, so I don't have Old Dominion in any of my bets. I definitely would have, but I'm still very alive in a lot of those. But that is disappointing.
Yep.
But the last thing I want to talk about is just how good the Kentucky UNC game was.
College basketball is at its best when you have the best programs competing at a high level, playing high level basketball, and
against each other.
And the stars of those games are showing up. Like Rob Dillingham had a phenomenal game for Kentucky. Oh, yeah. Like he was outstanding. Armando Bacot had a great game for North Carolina. Like it was
RJ Davis was unconscious at the end there. Reed Shepherd was playing great. It really felt like a March Madness game. It felt like an Elite Eight level game in December, where both teams were like not making many mistakes, not missing like open shots. Like if Calipari was calling up a play, it worked, and like Dillingham would like make a floater or like find this wraparound pass inside to Aaron Bradshaw. It would go up. I was just like, oh my God, this is beautiful basketball.
Yeah.
I was just overall in awe. And that was easily my favorite moment of that Saturday slate for all of sports was watching that game.
Yeah, it was in my opinion, the best game of the year so far. At least that I've watched.
I think so. I think as far as non-conference goes, it will, by the end of the year, we're going to look back and say like that was the best game of non-conference. But obviously conference play is like a different beast.
Yeah.
you know, we're going to see a lot of really good basketball towards the end. But
yep,
it's definitely really exciting. I mean, we're kind of like the RPI, the net, they're both out. Like we have our like bracketologies are coming out weekly now. Sooner than you realize, we're going to be in the thick of this college basketball season, which is really, really exciting. Because nothing beats college basketball. So.
Abso-fucking-lutely. All right. Well, that being said, that's all we've got this week. We'll be doing a national championship preview. The episode might come out a little later because of the holidays next week. So just an FYI, little programming note. But that being said, we are right in the middle of this thing, man. Gotta love it. So
yep.
Hit that like button, subscribe, follow on all the socials, do all those things, and we'll see you guys in the next one.